The red wine struck his white suit like a warning, and before the boy who dropped it could lose everything, I stepped forward and gave my name to the blame. It happened at 10:43 on a Thursday night inside Bella Vita, the kind of Boston restaurant where the candles were real, the napkins were linen, and the customers complained if the sea base arrived 90 seconds too late. Rain tapped against the tall front windows, turning Newberry Street into a blur of headlights and umbrellas. The air smelled like espresso, garlic butter, lemon zest, and money pretending it had taste. I had been working since noon, smiling through sore feet and the ache in my lower back, balancing plates I could not afford to order and wine I would never pronounce correctly in front of people who corrected waitresses for sport. My name was Emily Carter. I was 25 years old, one rent notice away from panic, and I had learned that dignity was something you carried quietly, especially when your uniform was borrowed and your paycheck was already spent before it arrived. Noah was the new busboy. 17, skinny, nervous, with soft blonde hair and hands too young to shake that badly. He was trying to clear table 12 when his elbow clipped the edge of the wine bucket. The bottle tipped. The glass tipped after it. For one suspended second, everyone watched the dark red wine arc through the candlelight like a ribbon. Then it splashed across Victor Langley's white designer suit. The whole restaurant went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that has teeth. Victor stood slowly, arms held away from his body, red wine spreading across his jacket like an insult. His face did not turn angry at first. It turned pleased, as if someone had handed him permission to be cruel. Our manager, Paul, rushed over so fast he nearly slipped on the polished floor. "Who did this?" he demanded. Noah froze beside me. His towel fell from his hand. I saw his mouth open, saw his eyes shine, saw the future disappearing from his face before he even spoke. He needed this job for his culinary internship. He needed the internship for his scholarship. He needed the scholarship because his mother was sick and the world did not make room for poor boys who made expensive mistakes. Paul followed Noah's stare to the spilled wine. "Noah," he said, voice low and sharp. "I am sorry," Noah whispered. It was barely sound. It was surrender. I do not remember deciding. I only remember stepping between him and the table, my black apron brushing against the edge of Victor's chair. "It was me," I said. Every head turned. The servers near the bar stopped moving. The hostess lowered the menus in her hands. Paul stared at me like I had knocked over the whole restaurant. "Emily." I reached across him too quickly, I said, keeping my voice steady. The glass was too close to the edge. It was my fault. Noah made a broken little sound behind me. I did not look back. If I looked at him, he might confess, and then all of this would be for nothing. Victor's eyes moved over me, not with interest, with measurement. People like him measured damage in dollars and people in usefulness. "Your fault," he repeated. "Yes, sir." The words tasted like pennies. Paul's face had gone pale. "Miss Carter will cover the dry cleaning and issue a formal apology." Cover the dry cleaning. As if my life had extra corners where money hid. As if my younger brother's school fees, the electric bill, and the envelope of cash in my sock drawer for rent had not already divided me into pieces. I swallowed. Of course. That was when I felt someone watching from the private corner near the back, behind the half wall where the most important guests sat when they wanted the room without being part of it. A man in a dark suit held a small cup of espresso halfway to his mouth. He had not moved during the commotion. Black hair brushed back, steel-gray eyes, face carved into stillness. Damien Husu. I did not know his name then, but I knew the type of man he was. Not loud. Not restless. Not trying to be seen because every person in the room already knew where not to look. His gaze slid past me to Noah, then back to me. He had seen everything. The spill. The boy. The lie. And in that single cold moment, I understood something that made my stomach tighten harder than Victor's ruined suit ever could. The most dangerous man in the room knew I was innocent, and he looked less surprised by the lie than by the reason I had told it. Paul made me apologize 3 times before Victor Langley allowed the restaurant to breathe again. Once at the table, with every server pretending not to listen. Once near the bar, where his friends watched me like I was part of the entertainment they had paid for. Once in the narrow hallway outside the private dining room, where Paul kept his smile fixed for the guests and his voice low enough to cut only me. "You will pay for the cleaning," he said, tapping his pen against the clipboard. And I am writing this up. I kept my hands folded in front of my apron. I understand. Do you? Because Bellavita does not tolerate carelessness. Behind him, Noah stood by the dish station with his face drained of color. He looked like he might be sick. I gave him the smallest shake of my head. Do not. Not now. Not after I had already stepped into the fire for him. I said I understand, I told Paul. Victor walked past us then, wearing the ruined jacket like a royal insult, his expression smooth again because men like him loved an audience more than justice. He paused beside me. A waitress with expensive hands, he said. You should be more careful what you touch. I looked at the floor because sometimes dignity meant not giving cruel people a reaction they could spend. Yes, sir. His shoes clicked away across the tile. Only then did I let myself breathe. In the dining room, conversations rose again. Silverware touched porcelain, and the string quartet near the entrance resumed a soft version of something classical and expensive. The world had decided the embarrassment was over. For me, it had only started. By midnight, my section was empty and my paycheck was already smaller in my head. Dry cleaning for a designer suit. A disciplinary note. Fewer shifts if Paul wanted to make a point. My younger brother, Caleb, had a field trip payment due Monday. Our landlord had stopped saying please in his messages. I had $27 in my checking account and a half tank of gas. That was the math of survival. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just numbers pressing there. Thumbs against your throat. I was carrying a tray of empty glasses to the kitchen when Noah blocked my path. Emily, he whispered. His eyes were red. I cannot let you do this. Move, Noah. It was my fault. Not anymore. Paul will fire you. Paul threatens to fire the ice machine when it makes too much noise. He did not smile. My mom would hate this. That stopped me for half a second. Then I softened my voice. Your mom needs you to keep this job. You need the internship hours. You need the recommendation. One mistake on paper can follow you longer than it should. His chin trembled. But it is not fair. I almost laughed at that, not because it was funny, but because 17 was still young enough to say those words like they could change the room. No, I said. It is not. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement near the private section. Damien Russo stood alone beside his table, one hand resting near his espresso cup, his gaze fixed on us through the dim gold light. He had not left. I wondered how much he had heard. All of it probably. Men like him did not survive by missing details. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of stillness that made everyone else seem nervous. His suit was black, tailored without a wrinkle. His face was calm in a way that did not invite comfort. Around him, even the restaurant seemed careful. A host lowered his voice when passing. A bartender stopped polishing the same glass. Paul straightened his tie when Damien glanced toward the bar. I did not know what Damien owned, but I knew ownership when I saw a room obeying it. Noah followed my stare and went stiff. Do you know him? He asked. No. Everyone knows him. Then everyone can keep knowing him from far away. I pushed through the swinging kitchen door before Damien could look at me any longer. But his stare followed me into the heat and noise, past the sinks, past the steam, past the smell of butter and burned sugar. It followed me while I wiped counters, while I counted my tips, while Paul deducted a number from my pay envelope that made my stomach twist. At 1:15 in the morning, I finally stepped out through the back door into the alley, the rain reduced to a cold mist that clung to my hair and lashes. I had my coat half buttoned when a man in a dark overcoat appeared beneath the security light. He did not crowd me. He did not touch me. He only held out a cream-colored envelope with my name written neatly across the front. Miss Carter, he said. Mr. Russo asked me to give you this. My pulse changed. I looked at the envelope, thick and clean and heavy with possibility. What is it? The man's expression did not shift. For the mistake you did not make. The alley seemed to narrow around those words. Somewhere inside the restaurant, dishes clattered. Somewhere beyond the brick walls, Boston traffic hissed over wet pavement. I took the envelope because my fingers moved before my pride could stop them. Then I opened it just enough to see cash. Too much cash. Enough to fix several small disasters at once. Enough to make breathing easier. Enough to become dangerous. I closed it again and held it back out. Tell him no. The man blinked once. Miss Carter. Tell him I do not get paid for protecting someone. Even if protection costs you? I looked toward the back door, where Noah was probably still blaming himself for being human. Then I looked at the envelope and saw every trap my mother had ever warned me about wearing fresh paper. Especially then, I said. The man hesitated, then took it back. He disappeared into the mist without another word. I stood there alone, cold and poorer than I had been 5 minutes ago, but still mine. Across the alley, parked beneath a dead street lamp, a black car waited with its engine running. I could not see through the tinted window, but I knew he was there. And I knew by the way the car did not move for a long time, that Damian Russo had never expected me to refuse. By the time I got home, the envelope I had refused felt heavier than anything I still carried. My apartment was on the 3rd floor of a narrow brick building in East Boston, above a laundromat that made the walls hum until 2 in the morning. The stairwell smelled like detergent, damp coats, and somebody's reheated pizza. I moved quietly because Caleb had school in 6 hours and because tired people learn to make less noise in places they cannot afford to lose. Our kitchen light was still on. My little brother sat at the table with his history textbook open, one sneaker tapping against the chair leg. At 16, he was already taller than me, all elbows and worry, pretending not to be scared by bills he was too young to understand. You are late, he said. You are not my father. No. I am more responsible. I smiled because he needed one from me, then set my tips on the counter and counted them twice. $43. After Paul's deduction, that was what 13 hours of swallowing pride had become. Caleb watched my hands. Bad night. I thought of red wine on white fabric. Noah's face. Victor's smile. Damian Russo's black car waiting in the mist. Messy night. That is waitress code for terrible. Go to bed. Emily. His voice softened. Did something happen? I wanted to tell him no, but lies were heavier at home. I covered for someone at work. It may cost me a little. Caleb's face tightened. He was young but not innocent. Poverty makes children fluent in consequences. Why would you do that? I took off my shoes and felt the floor cold through my socks. Because he is a kid. So am I. That hurt because it was true. I looked at him, then really looked. The homework spread across the table. The chipped mug full of tap water. The thrift store hoodie with sleeves too short for his wrists. I had been protecting everyone so long that sometimes I forgot protection had a shadow too. I know, I said quietly. And I am sorry. He looked away first. You cannot save everybody. I thought of the envelope. Of how easy it would have been to bring that money home, tuck it into the coffee can above the fridge, pay rent before the landlord sent another message. By Caleb the graphing calculator his math teacher kept mentioning like $90 was not a locked gate. I thought of my mother at our old kitchen table years ago, signing papers she did not understand because a rich man had promised to help. I remembered how help had turned into favors, and favors had turned into permission, and permission had turned into her apologizing in her own house. No, I said. But I can choose who I become while trying. Caleb did not answer. He closed his book and went to bed, leaving me alone with the humming walls and the city blinking outside our small window. I slept badly with the sound of rain in my dreams and steel-gray eyes watching from the dark. The next night at Bella Vita, everything felt staged for punishment. Paul gave me the smallest section, the one near the kitchen doors where customers complained about noise. Noah tried to talk to me twice, but I kept moving because kindness could crack if people leaned on it too hard. At 8:30 Damian Russo walked in. The restaurant changed before I saw him. Conversations lowered. Paul straightened so quickly he nearly dropped his reservation book. The hostess smiled with panic in her eyes. Damian wore a dark navy suit this time. No tie, white shirt open at the collar. Rain still shining on his shoulders. He did not look toward the private section. He looked at me. My hands tightened around the tray. Paul hurried over. Mr. Russo, your usual table is ready. Not tonight, Damian said. His voice was quiet, but the room adjusted to it. I need a word with Miss Carter. My stomach dipped. I am working. Then I will wait. He did. For 20 minutes, he sat alone at the end of the bar with an espresso he did not drink, watching nothing and missing everything. When my last table left, I found him in the back hallway near the closed kitchen, under the fluorescent light that made everyone look too honest. He did not block the exit. He did not step close. He simply stood there, tall and still, as if patience was another language of power. "Why did you lie?" he asked. I folded my arms. I did not lie for myself. That makes it noble? No, I looked toward the kitchen window, where Noah was stacking plates with trembling concentration. It just makes it necessary. Damien's eyes followed mine. He made a mistake. Yes. And you paid for it. Some people cannot afford to be punished. His gaze returned to me, sharper now. And you can. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to sound brave enough to survive the sentence. But the truth stood between us in my worn black flats, my cheap apron, and the rent notice folded in my purse. No, I said. But I can survive being misunderstood. For the first time, Damien Russo looked away. Damien looked away only for a second, but it changed the shape of the hallway. Men like him did not look away because they were embarrassed. They looked away because something had reached them before they could stop it. The fluorescent light buzzed above us. In the kitchen, someone shut off the dishwasher, and the sudden quiet made my own breathing sound too loud. Being misunderstood is not survival, he said at last. Sometimes it is the only kind people can afford. His eyes came back to mine. You say that like you have practiced it. I should have walked past him. I should have gone home, counted my tips, checked Caleb's homework, and pretended the most powerful man in the restaurant had not just found a loose thread in me. Instead, exhaustion made me honest. My mother worked housekeeping at a hotel near the waterfront when I was 12, I said. A guest accused her of stealing a watch. She had not touched it. Everyone knew she had not touched it. But the guest was rich, and the hotel needed rich people more than it needed women who cleaned rooms. Damien did not interrupt. That made it worse somehow. Cruel people interrupt because they do not care where a story breaks. He listened like every word was being placed carefully on a scale. My father was supposed to defend her, I continued. Instead, he told her to apologize. He said an apology was cheaper than a lawyer. She lost the job anyway. Then he left 2 months later because shame was apparently easier to escape than rent. My mouth twisted, but it was not a smile. So yes, I have practiced being misunderstood. Damien's face stayed calm, but his hand tightened once at his side. Not into anger, into control. And that boy tonight? Noah. You decided his future mattered more than your name. No. Y su ayuda. I decided one mistake should not be allowed to become someone's whole life. The words hung there between the steam pipes and the stacked crates of imported olive oil. Damien looked toward the small kitchen window where Noah was wiping down stainless steel counters with too much focus, like work could erase guilt. You think you saved him? I bought him time. With money you do not have. You checked. His silence answered before his mouth did. Heat rose in my face, not from shame, from fury. Of course you did. I needed to know whether you were reckless or desperate. And both, he said quietly. I stepped closer before I remembered who he was. You do not get to weigh my life like one of your business deals. His expression sharpened, but he still did not move into my space. That was not what I meant. Men like you always mean well after they have already crossed the line. For the first time, something almost human flashed across his face. Not guilt exactly. Recognition. Men like me, he repeated. Yes. You have a category ready. Experience builds categories. He nodded slowly, as if that hurt in a place he would never admit existed. Then let me be clear. I did not ask about you because I wanted to own the answer. Why did you ask? Because I have seen men blame their own brothers to keep a chair at a table. I have seen women sell secrets about people who loved them. I have seen loyalty turn into smoke the moment fear entered the room. His voice dropped. And last night, I watched a waitress with $27 in her checking account protect a boy who could give her nothing. The number struck me like cold water. Do not say my balance out loud. His eyes softened by a fraction. You are right. I am sorry. I froze. The apology was simple. No police. No performance. It did not ask me to forgive him. That made it harder to reject. I do not want your money, I said. I know. I do not want your pity. I know that too. Then what do you want? Damien took a breath, and for the first time since I had met him, he looked less like a man giving orders and more like a man choosing each word because the wrong one might cost him something. An answer I cannot buy. The honesty unsettled me more than the envelope had. Behind us, the kitchen door creaked open. Noah stood there, pale and terrified. Emily, he said, voice shaking. Paul is asking for you. I stepped back from Damien as if distance could restore common sense. I have to work. Your shift ended 20 minutes ago. Then I have to be yelled at for free. Damien's jaw tightened. No, the word was quiet, but the hallway felt it. I lifted a hand before he could become whatever men expected him to be. Do not. He stopped. Just stopped. That single restraint was louder than any threat. If you want to understand me, I said, start by not turning my problem into your performance. He studied me for a long moment. Then he stepped aside, opening the path back to the dining room. Go, he said. I will listen from here. I did not know why that sentence followed me harder than any command would have. Maybe because for once, a powerful man had been told no, and instead of making the room pay for it, he stayed exactly where I asked him to stay. Paul was waiting near the bar with his clipboard held against his chest like a shield. Victor Langley stood beside him, now wearing a spare black jacket someone had found from the coat room, which somehow made him look even more offended than the stained white one had. The dining room had mostly emptied, but a few lingering guests pretended to study dessert menus while watching the scene through lowered lashes. Bella Vita was built for elegance, but embarrassment had a way of making even marble floors feel cheap. Miss Carter, Paul said, using my last name the way managers do when they want witnesses to hear authority. Mr. Langley is willing to avoid a formal complaint if you sign a statement accepting full responsibility for the incident and agree to payroll deductions until the cleaning and replacement costs are satisfied. He held out a paper. The words on it blurred for a second, then sharpened into something worse than I expected. Replacement costs. Damages. Negligence. The number at the bottom made my stomach hollow out. $8,000. I looked at Paul. That is not a dry cleaning bill. Victor smiled. The suit was custom. Then it should have been smart enough not to sit next to a wine bucket. The words left my mouth before survival could stop them. Paul went pale. Victor's smile thinned. Behind me, somewhere in the back hallway, I felt Damien's silence like a hand resting on the edge of the room. Not touching, not interfering, but present. Paul lowered his voice. Emily signed the paper. No, it was a small word, but it stood up straighter than I felt. Noah appeared near the kitchen door. I will tell them, he said, voice cracking. I will tell them it was me. Noah, I warned. No, he said, stepping forward. His face was white, but his eyes were wet and stubborn. I cannot let you do this. Every part of me wanted to stop him, to push him back behind me, to keep the future from closing on him because of one terrible moment. But then I saw what guilt was doing to him. It was folding him in half from the inside. Protection could become another kind of cage if you held someone inside it too tightly. Victor looked from Noah to me, and something satisfied passed across his face. So she lied. Paul turned on me instantly. Emily. I lifted my chin. I took responsibility. You lied to management. I protected a kid from being destroyed over an accident. That is not your decision to make. Apparently neither is an $8,000 bill. The room held its breath. Then Damien stepped out of the hallway. He did not rush. He did not raise his voice. He simply entered, and every conversation in the restaurant seemed to remember it had somewhere else to be. Paul's clipboard lowered by an inch. Victor's eyes sharpened with recognition, and for the first time that night, his confidence lost its polish. Russo, Victor said. Langley, Damien replied. One word each, but the air between them carried history I did not understand. Damien looked at me first, not Victor. You told me not to turn this into my performance. I did. I am still listening. That almost broke something in me. Not because he had obeyed, but because he had remembered the exact shape of my boundary. Victor gave a short laugh. This is touching. Are you collecting wounded waitresses now? Damien's expression did not change. Careful. The word was quiet enough to be missed by anyone who was not listening. I was listening. So was Victor. I stepped forward before the room could tilt toward something I did not want. Do not, I said to Damien, softer this time. His eyes came to mine immediately. I said careful, not anything more. I know what careful can become with men like you. For a second I thought he might be insulted. Instead he nodded once. Then tell me what you want. I looked at the paper in Paul's hand, at Noah shaking near the kitchen, at Victor smiling like laws were just accessories rich people wore when convenient. My throat tightened but my voice did not break. Justice. Not revenge. Damien held my gaze for a long moment. Then he turned to Paul. Preserve the security footage from table 12, the bar mirror, and the west dining room camera. Paul stammered. I would need approval from ownership. Damien's eyes cooled. You have it. The room shifted again. My eyes moved to him. You own Bella Vita? Quietly, he said. Not quietly enough, I whispered. Victor's face changed then, not fear exactly, but calculation beginning to fail. Damien removed his phone and spoke to someone in a calm, businesslike voice about legal review, payroll records, employee protections, and a customer attempting to pressure staff into signing a false liability statement. No threats. No spectacle. No broken glass or raised hands. Just words that sounded clean enough for daylight. Victor looked at me with sudden dislike. You should have stayed invisible. I thought of my mother. Of Caleb. Of Noah. Of every woman who had ever swallowed truth because rent was due and powerful men were bored. I tried that, I said. It did not make the world any kinder. Damien ended the call and stood beside me, not in front of me. That mattered. Should not have, but it did. Paul slowly folded the paper he had wanted me to sign. Noah wiped his face with both hands. Victor left without finishing his drink, his shoes clicking hard across the marble like the floor had personally offended him. When the door closed behind him, I finally exhaled. Damien looked down at me. Was that justice? I looked at the empty doorway, then at Noah, still employed, still breathing, still 17. It is a beginning. Damien's voice softened. Then I will not mistake it for an ending. And for the first time all night, I believed he understood that saving someone did not mean taking ownership of the rescue. By Friday morning, the story had already changed shape 3 times depending on who was telling it. In the kitchen, someone said Victor Langley had threatened to sue Bella Vita and lost his temper when the cameras proved Noah had spilled the wine. At the hostess stand, someone whispered that Damien Russo had purchased the truth with 1 phone call. By the bar, a server claimed Paul had almost resigned on the spot, though Paul was still very much there, pale and quiet, moving through the restaurant like a man who had discovered the floor could vanish beneath polished shoes. I kept my head down and rolled silverware. That was what people never understood about being at the center of a scandal. You still had to fold napkins. You still had to refill water glasses. You still had to smile when a woman sent back risotto because it was too creamy, as if the whole world had not tilted 48 hours earlier. Noah stayed close to the kitchen and looked at me like I had pulled him from a burning building, instead of simply telling a complicated truth too late. Stop looking guilty, I told him while stacking bread plates. I am guilty. You are 17. That is not a legal defense. No, but it is a human one. His mouth trembled toward a smile, then failed. Mr. Russo's lawyer called my school. I froze. What? Not in a bad way. The internship coordinator needed a statement. They said the footage showed it was an accident, and that no disciplinary action would be taken. Relief loosened something under my ribs, then tightened again when I thought of Damien arranging pieces of my life from rooms I could not see. Even when he did it right, it frightened me how easily he could move the world. That evening, Paul called me into the small office behind the wine room. The air smelled like printer toner and old stress. A woman in a gray suit sat in the visitor chair with a leather briefcase on her knees. She introduced herself as a labor attorney retained by Bella Vita's ownership group. Not Damien's attorney, she said carefully. The restaurants. I almost laughed at the distinction, but she slid a folder across the desk before I could decide whether to be offended. Inside were payroll corrections, removal of the disciplinary write-up, reimbursement for the deduction Paul had taken from my check, and a written apology for asking me to sign an improper liability statement. The apology was so stiff it looked like it had been assembled by people allergic to feelings. Still, my name was spelled correctly. That counted for something. Paul would not meet my eyes. "You can take the weekend off with pay," the attorney said. "Or keep your scheduled shifts. Your choice. Your choice." The words landed differently now. I looked at Paul, then at the folder, then through the office window where I could see Noah wiping tables with careful hope. "I will keep my shifts," I said. "I need the money." Nobody argued. That was new too. When I stepped outside after closing, Damien was waiting across the alley beside a black car, hands in the pockets of his dark coat. No driver visible. No men stationed near the door. Just him under the security light, rain misting around his shoulders. I stopped halfway down the steps. "Did you send the attorney?" "The ownership group did." That sounds like a suit trying to sound innocent. It is still true. I folded my arms. "You are very good at hiding behind technicalities." "I am trying to become better at standing in front of them." The honesty quieted me. Behind us, Boston hummed wet and restless, tires hissing along the street, a train groaning somewhere in the distance. Damien looked toward the restaurant's back door. "Noah keeps his internship." I heard. "Paul will undergo management review." That sounds painful in a very corporate way. It is meant to be corrective. I studied him. "You wanted something less corrective." He did not deny it. "Yes." My pulse softened, then guarded itself again. "But you did not do it." "No, why?" Damien looked at me then, and the gray in his eyes seemed less cold than tired. "Because you asked for justice." It should not have mattered that he remembered, but it did. Stepped off the last stair, careful on the wet pavement. "Justice still cost you nothing." "That is not true. Money does not count." His mouth tightened, almost like a smile that did not know if it had permission. "Control does." The answer reached me before I could block it. For a man like him, restraint was not weakness. It was sacrifice in a language he was still learning to speak. I looked away first. "My brother thinks I am reckless." "Is he wrong?" "No good. Reckless people sometimes need witnesses." "And are you volunteering?" "No," he paused. "I am asking whether I may become one." The alley went quiet around us. Not silent. Just soft enough for the question to stand on its own. I thought of envelopes, cameras, lawyers, ruined suits, and the way he had stepped beside me instead of in front of me. "Witnesses do not interfere," I said. "They see." Damien nodded once. "Then I will start there." I walked home alone that night because I needed to prove I still could, but for the first time in years the walk did not feel like carrying the whole city on my back. Somewhere behind me, a black car turned in the opposite direction, giving me the one gift I had not expected from Damien Russo: distance. Saturday should have felt easier. The write-up was gone. The money Paul deducted had returned to my account. Noah's internship was safe, and Caleb had stopped looking at me like I was a candle burning too close to a curtain. But peace, I had learned, did not always arrive when danger stepped back. Sometimes it arrived with paperwork, apologies, and a strange hollow space where fear used to live. I spent the morning at the laundromat below our apartment, watching my black work shirt spin behind the glass while Caleb filled out scholarship forms at the folding table beside me. Outside, Boston moved under a pale gray sky, all wet sidewalks and impatient horns. "You are quiet," Caleb said without looking up. "I am always quiet." "No. You are quiet in a way that means you are thinking about a man." I nearly dropped the detergent cap. "You are 16. Stop sounding like someone's grandmother." He grinned for half a second, then grew serious. "Is he dangerous?" The washing machine thumped once hard like it wanted an answer to. I thought of Damien in the back hallway, his voice calm, his power held tightly behind his teeth because I had asked him to hold it. "Yes," I said. Caleb looked up. I added, "But not in the way I expected." He studied me with the exhausting honesty of someone who loved me and did not trust my self-sacrifice. That is not comforting. "I know." My phone buzzed before he could say more. Unknown number. My stomach tightened on instinct. The message was short. Bellavita made a mistake choosing sides. Tell Russo the girl is not worth the trouble. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Caleb saw my face change. Emily. I locked the screen. Nothing. That was a lie. That was me trying to keep you from worrying. Same thing. He was right and I hated that he was old enough to be right. I told him to stay inside, grabbed my damp laundry without folding it, and went upstairs with my heart beating too fast for a Saturday morning. By noon, the message had been joined by another. Then a third. No threats specific enough to report. No names. Just pressure wrapped in polite poison. Victor had lost the first round, and men like him did not enjoy losing in public. I did not call Damien. I told myself that was strength. Really, it was fear with better posture. I went to work that evening anyway because bills did not care whether rich men were angry. Bella Vita glowed warm and golden against the rainy street. Every window polished, every table dressed like nothing ugly had ever happened there. Paul avoided my eyes. Noah stayed close. The hostess whispered that Victor had canceled his reservation but that two of his associates were seated at the bar. I saw them before they saw me. Expensive coats. Empty smiles. One of them lifted a glass slightly when my eyes passed over him. A toast without joy. I kept walking. My hands did not shake until I reached the service station. At 9:15, the fire alarm panel chirped near the back hall. Not loud enough for guests to panic, just enough to send Paul and two kitchen staff rushing toward the utility room. The bar associates stood at the same time. So did I. Something about the timing felt wrong. Noah stepped toward me. Emily, do not go back there. Stay here. No, he looked 17 again and brave in the terrible way young people are when they think courage means following fear. I took his wrist gently. You already got your future back. Do not spend it on my stubbornness. He stopped, eyes wet with frustration. I moved toward the back hall, but before I reached it, the rear door opened from the outside. Damien stepped in from the rain. No announcement. No ruse. Just dark coat, wet hair, steel gray eyes taking in the room, the bar, the associates, my face. He had not followed me. At least I wanted to believe that. But he had seen something I had not. The two men at the bar froze in that small, telling way people do when they suddenly remember consequences. Damien did not look at them for long. He looked at me. You did not call. I did not want to be managed. I know. Then why are you here? He held up his phone, screen glowing with forwarded messages. Because Noah called. I turned. Noah stood near the service station, pale but unashamed. You said witnesses see, he whispered. I saw. The words landed in me like pain and gratitude at once. Damien stepped closer, stopping several feet away, leaving me the choice to close the distance or not. There are proper ways to handle this, he said. Legal ways. Documented ways. Public ways. My throat tightened. And the other ways? His eyes did not flinch. Not tonight. Behind him, one of the men from the bar set down cash and walked out quickly, the other following without finishing his drink. No confrontation. No scene. Just absence. It should have felt anticlimactic. Instead, it felt like a door that might have slammed choosing to close quietly. Paul emerged from the back, confused, saying the alarm panel had been tampered with but nothing was damaged. Damien asked him to call building security, preserve footage and file a report. Clean words again. Daylight words even at night. I looked at Damien, and something in me trembled from the effort of not leaning toward him. You keep arriving at the edge of my fear, I said. I am trying not to step over it. That sounds difficult for you. It is. The honesty was almost a smile, except it carried too much weight. Outside, rain tapped the windows like a nervous hand. Inside, Noah stood straighter. Paul made the call. The room resumed breathing. And I realized the most dangerous thing about Damien Russo was no longer what he could do to my enemies. It was what he was willing not to do because I had asked. By Sunday morning, the messages had stopped, but the quiet they left behind did not feel peaceful. It felt watched. I moved through my apartment carefully, making coffee while Caleb pretended not to check the hallway through the peephole every 10 minutes. The sky outside was the color of dirty dishwater, and the laundromat sign below our window buzzed weakly through the glass. I hated that Victor Langley had managed to bring his shadow into our kitchen without ever stepping inside. Caleb sat at the table with his scholarship forms spread out, tapping a pen against his thumb. "You should let Russo handle it," he said. I poured coffee into the chipped blue mug our mother used to love. "Russo is not a weather system. I do not have to let him happen to me. That is not what I meant." "I know." I sat across from him. "But I need you to understand something. When powerful men solve your problems, sometimes they start to believe your life is part of the payment." Caleb looked down. "Do you think he believes that?" I thought of Damien standing in Bella Vita, asking what I wanted instead of deciding for me. I thought of him stopping at the edge of my fear. "No," I said slowly. "I think he is trying not to." At 3 in the afternoon, an email arrived from Bella Vita's attorney asking me to come in early for a formal meeting. The message included words like employee safety, documented harassment, third-party interference, and protective procedure. Clean words again. Words that wore pressed shirts and filed themselves in folders. I almost deleted it. Then I remembered Noah's face when he said witnesses see. Maybe accepting help did not have to mean surrendering if I kept my hands on the truth. I arrived at Bella Vita before opening, while the dining room was still half lit and the chairs were lined up like quiet witnesses on the marble floor. Damien was already there, seated at a table near the window, not in the private corner. That mattered. The attorney sat across from him with a laptop open. Paul stood by the bar looking like he had aged 5 years since Thursday. Noah hovered near the kitchen, twisting a towel in his hands. "Why is Noah here?" I asked. Damien answered first. "Because he chose to make a statement." I looked at Noah. "You do not have to." "I know," he said. His voice shook but his chin stayed up. "That is why I am doing it." Something inside me softened and hurt at the same time. Protection had kept him safe for one night. But truth was teaching him how to stand. The attorney explained everything without drama. Victor's associates had been identified on security footage near the alarm panel. The messages had been preserved. The original wine incident had been reviewed from 3 camera angles and a bar mirror reflection. Victor had attempted to pressure staff into a false financial agreement. Bella Vita would report the interference, revoke Victor's access, notify his business partners through legal counsel, and cooperate with any investigation tied to his fraudulent claims. No revenge. No spectacle. No debt in my name. Just facts lined up carefully enough that even money had to step around them. I listened with my hands folded in my lap. When the attorney finished, she asked if I consented to Bella Vita including my statement. Consent. Another word I was not used to hearing from people with power. I looked at Damien. He did not nod. Did not signal. Did not rescue me from deciding. He only waited. "Yes," I said. "But Noah's scholarship cannot be touched by this." The attorney nodded. "That has been addressed. And Paul does not punish staff for cooperating." Paul swallowed. "I will not." I held his eyes. Not quietly either. His face flushed. "I understand." Damien's mouth moved almost imperceptibly, not a smile, but maybe the ghost of respect. After the meeting, the attorney left to make calls, Paul disappeared into the office, and Noah went back to prep work with shoulders a little straighter than before. I remained near the front window, watching rain collect in thin lines against the glass. Damien came to stand several feet away, leaving a respectful space between us and the rest of the room. "You did not tell me what to say," I said. "No. You did not even look at me when she asked. I wanted your answer to belong to you." I turned toward him. "Do you know how strange that sounds coming from you?" "Yes." "Does it bother you?" "Less than it used to." The honesty slipped into the space between us, quiet and dangerous in a new way. Not dangerous like fear. Dangerous like hope, because hope could make a person careless if she mistook it for proof. "I am still angry," I said. "At Victor. At all of it. At him. At Paul. At money. At how fast a room believes the person with the better suit." Damien looked through the glass, where Boston moved beneath umbrellas and gray light. "Rooms can be taught. By men like you? Sometimes." He turned back to me. "But they remember longer when taught by women like you." I did not know what to do with that, so I looked away before my face softened too much. That evening Victor's name appeared on local business news. Not as a victim of ruined clothing, but as a man under review for fraudulent billing, coercive contracts, and intimidation of service workers at multiple venues. No one mentioned me by name. No one mentioned Noah. For once, the truth had walked into the room without dragging the weakest person behind it. After closing, Damien waited near the front door. Not the alley. Public light. Open street. No shadows pretending to be gifts. May I walk beside you? He asked. Not take you home. Not have my driver bring you. Not get in. Beside you. I tightened my coat and stepped into the mist. Beside me, I said. Not ahead of me. Damien nodded once. Beside you. And as we walked down Newberry Street under the rain-softened lamps, I realized justice did not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it arrived quietly, in documented truth, returned choices, and a dangerous man learning to match the pace of a woman who refused to be owned. By the time Monday came, Boston had learned how to speak around Victor Langley's name. Not loudly. Not bravely. Just enough. A headline here. A canceled reservation there. A board member distancing himself on local business radio. Men like Victor did not disappear when exposed. They simply lost the luxury of being believed first. At Bella Vita, the staff moved differently. Not free exactly, but less bent. Paul had been placed on administrative review, which was a polite phrase for sitting somewhere else while people examined the damage he had called management. A new supervisor named Maria took over the floor with calm eyes, fair schedules, and a voice that did not use fear as punctuation. Noah kept his internship. He still apologized too much, but now he also laughed when the pastry chef teased him, and every time I heard it from across the dining room, something in my chest unclenched. Caleb's scholarship forms were submitted on time. The landlord received rent before he could send another reminder with too many capital letters. My checking account was still small, my feet still hurt after doubles, and my life did not become easy because a powerful man had noticed me. That mattered. I did not want a miracle that erased me. I wanted a life I could stand inside without owing my breath to anyone. Damien seemed to understand that more each day, though understanding did not come naturally to him. He came to Bella Vita twice that week, not to the private corner, but to a small table near the window where anyone could see him and nobody had to whisper. He ordered espresso, tipped through payroll instead of leaving cash under saucers, and never once asked when my shift ended unless I told him first. The old version of me would have called that nothing. The woman I was becoming understood it was restraint wearing ordinary clothes. On Friday night after closing, I found him outside beneath the green awning, rain gathering on the shoulders of his dark coat. Newberry Street glowed behind him, soft with passing headlights and wet brick. He held no envelope, no folder, no gift pretending not to be a claim. Just his hands in his coat pockets and a question in his eyes. You waited, I said. I did. For permission? For timing. I almost smiled. That sounds like something a lawyer taught you. A waitress, he said. She was more expensive. The laugh escaped before I could stop it, small and surprised. Damien looked at me as if that sound had done something the city never could. Not conquered him. Not softened him completely. Just reached a locked room and knocked once. We walked slowly side by side, past closed boutiques and brownstone steps shining with rain. He did not guide me with a hand at my back. He did not shorten the silence by filling it with promises. He matched my pace, and somehow that felt more intimate than any grand confession. Noah told me you arranged for his scholarship coordinator to receive the footage, I said. The attorney arranged it. Damien. Yes, he admitted. I made sure she had what she needed, without asking for credit. I am learning that credit can become another form of ownership. I looked at him through the mist. You say things like that now. Because they are true now. We stopped at the corner where the crosswalk light blinked red. Across the street, a young busboy from another restaurant struggled with a stack of takeout boxes, and an older woman helped him before anything fell. A tiny kindness. Barely a moment. Once I might have missed it because I was too busy bracing for the next disaster. Damien saw me watching. You notice people before they break, he said. Someone has to. And who notices you? The question settled between us, warmer than it should have been. I looked at the wet pavement, at the reflected traffic lights bleeding red and gold beneath our shoes. I used to think no one could, I said. Then you saw me take blame for Noah. I saw you choose the cost with your eyes open. And you thought I was foolish. I thought you were impossible. I turned to him. And now? His gaze held mine steady and careful. Now I think impossible things are sometimes the only ones worth changing for. The walk signal turned white, but neither of us moved. I thought of my mother losing her job because truth had been too poor to defend itself. I thought of Caleb telling me I could not save everyone. I thought of Noah standing up when I finally let him. Maybe dignity was not refusing every hand. Maybe it was learning which hands opened and which ones closed. You may walk me home, I said. His face remained still, but something in his eyes shifted, quiet and unmistakable. Beside you, he said. Not ahead of me. Not ahead of you. We crossed the street together. No music swelled. No city bowed. No promise solved the future. But Damien Russo walked beside me through the rain. A dangerous man choosing not to use danger as proof of love, and I let him. That was the beginning I could believe in. Not surrender. Not rescue. Not a debt hidden inside tenderness. Just two people moving at the same pace under Boston rain. Learning that power means nothing until it protects without taking. And love means nothing until it leaves you free.